the day before the birth. I was robbed. When the police took me to the operating room at the hospital, I was too weak to open my eyes. In a daze, I heard my husband Christopher's voice. Are you sure? Yes, but have you really thought it through? It's not too late to have the operation and save the baby. No, remove my uterus as well. Only in this way, Sophia and I's son will become the sole heir to the Thompson Group. As for Emily, she will have the title of First Lady of the Thompson Group. This will ensure her a comfortable life in the future. I finally realized this was all a carefully planned deception. The person I loved so deeply was the one who wanted to hurt me. In that case, I decided to give up on him. The effects of the anesthesia slowly wore off. I gradually came to. I tried to open my eyes, but I hear Christopher talking. Dr. Anderson, did Emily's operation go well? Madam's uterus has been completely removed. Now she just needs to rest. Dr. Anderson pauses. He asks cautiously, Mr. Thompson, will you regret this? I've met the little girl. She has thick eyebrows and big eyes. She looks exactly like you. It's a pity she hasn't had the chance to see the world. She's gone. Christopher says calmly, there's nothing to regret. She got in the way of Sophia's development. I had to get rid of her myself. As for Emily, he paused, then continued, in a while, I'll arrange for someone to go to the orphanage and pick Sophia up. Emily will be able to be a mother then. But young Master Sophia looks quite a bit like you. We'll miss Emily. Dr. Anderson stopped in the middle of a sentence. Don't worry. All babies look alike. Emily won't be able to tell. She trusts me completely. She would never doubt me. Christopher said. He walked over to my bed and sat down. He took my hand in his. His hands were warm, but I felt cold all over. This was the man I had loved for 10 years, for him and another woman's child. He had cruelly deprived us of the chance to have a biological child. He had even deprived me of the right to be a mother. What was even more ironic was that he had asked me to raise the bastard child who had caused my daughter's death. I felt unbearable pain. My heart felt like it was being crushed. If only I had been more careful. If only I had avoided that mugger. I was thinking this when Christopher's phone rang. Is everything taken care of? Find someone to arrange for him to be transferred to the most remote prison. As for his family, give them a sum of money. Tell them to leave New York City. Get things done quickly. Don't let Emily find out. Hearing this, I felt my whole body go cold. It felt like my blood was freezing. I always thought that the security in our neighborhood was top-notch in New York City. How could a robber have gotten in? I never imagined that my husband was behind it all. For Sophia and the baby, he was capable of doing this. My heart sank. It seems that I can't avoid the robber who was long ago arranged. In that case, I will fulfill Christopher's wish. I slowly opened my eyes and looked at the man in front of me. Emily, when did you wake up? Christopher's eyes revealed a trace of unease. I just woke up. I suppressed the sadness in my heart, but the tears still couldn't stop falling. Emily, are you okay? Does the wound hurt a lot? Christopher's eyes were full of worry and anxiety. I'll go get the doctor. No, I gently held Christopher back. I'm not in pain. I just didn't expect to survive. Emily, don't say that, Christopher said seriously. I'm here. No one can hurt you anymore. Hearing this, I felt sad and bitter. All the pain was caused by Christopher. There was no future between us. Christopher didn't notice my discomfort. He picked up the wet cotton swab next to me and gently wiped my dry lips. Emily, you just had surgery. You can't drink water yet. Hang in there, I nodded. But my heart was getting heavier and heavier. Why, since you never loved me? Why pretend to care about me? Christopher helped me fix my quilt. Then he said seriously, Emily, I have something to tell you. He hesitated for a moment. He said, our baby is gone, and you are too badly injured. In the future, he didn't finish his sentence. His expression was a bit difficult. I looked at him. My heart ached. Christopher's acting skills are really something. Forget it. Let me end this myself. I was about to speak. Christopher continued. Emily, the Thompson family needs an heir. Why don't we adopt a child? Hearing this, I was a little surprised. I thought Christopher would continue to make up lies to deceive me. I didn't expect him to so readily propose adopting a child. He still used the heir as an excuse. Christopher is really in a hurry. I tried hard to suppress my sadness. I nodded and agreed. Okay. Christopher saw this and was overjoyed. He immediately said, I'll send someone to find one right away. Let's see if there's a suitable child. Christopher seemed to suddenly realize that he had done something wrong. He looked at me a little embarrassed and said, Honey, don't be angry. I'm just afraid that you'll be too sad about losing the baby. So I want to quickly find a child to comfort you. Don't worry. I will never love another woman in my life. Once we find a child, we will raise him as our own. Hearing this, I felt a pang of sadness in my heart. My own child. My own child was killed in my womb by someone sent by his father. I will never be able to bear children again. Christopher actually wanted me to take good care of his child with Sophia. He was so heartless. I felt sad and angry. My hands unconsciously gripped the bed sheet. My fingers turned white. Wife, what's wrong? Does the wound still hurt? Christopher asked with concern after seeing it. I shook my head. At that moment, the phone suddenly rang with the video call alert tone. Christopher's expression looked a bit nervous. He said to his wife, "Honey, something came up at work that I need to take care of. You just rest well." After saying that, Christopher quickly walked out of the hospital room. I stared at his back. A strong feeling of hatred welled up in my heart. I picked up the tablet he had left on the side. I unlocked the screen. I opened WeChat, which was logged in at the same time as his phone. Sophia's chat window immediately appeared in front of me. The current video has been answered on other devices. I looked at the short line of text. I shook my head with a bitter smile. It was indeed Sophia looking for him. I twisted my hands together while looking through the two people's chat history. "Honey, today the baby kicked me in the stomach. Dear, the doctor said our son is healthy. Dear, the baby learned to smile today. Dear, how are you going to get the baby back to the Thompsons?" Most of the time, it was Sophia talking nonstop over there. She would also send photos of the baby. Christopher rarely replied to her, but every night, he would have a video chat with her. It would last 4 or 5 hours. No wonder. That day, when I went into the study to bring Christopher some tea, he got so angry, he questioned me. "Why are you here? There are computers and electronic devices everywhere. The radiation is so strong. What if it affects our child? You are a mother now. Can't you think more about what you do?" Looking back now, I realized that Christopher didn't really care about me or the baby. He was just worried that I would interrupt his nightly video chats with Sophia. I felt so guilty about it for a long time. What a silly thing to do. I stared at the chat on the screen. My heart felt like it had swallowed a bitter pill. Then, Christopher's mother suddenly sent a message. "Christopher, today, Sophia and I took Sophia to the hospital for a physical examination. Sophia is healthy. Have you mentioned that matter to Emily? When will Sophia officially become a Thompson?" I stood there in a daze. It felt as if all the blood in my body had suddenly congealed. So my mother-in-law knew about it too. My heart ached. It hurt so much. After we got married, my mother-in-law said she didn't like the nanny. I quit my favorite job. I focused on taking care of the family. I really treated her like a mother. But she helped Christopher lie to me. I suddenly felt very lost. Maybe this family never really accepted me. I decided to leave. I took out my phone and booked a flight to Canada a week later. On the day I was discharged from the hospital, Christopher said he had some work to do at the office. He asked me to go straight to my mother-in-law's house. But when I arrived at my mother-in-law's house, I found that there was no one in the living room. I walked up the stairs to the second floor. As I passed the first room, I heard the sound of a baby crying softly. I hesitated for a moment. Then I pushed open the door and walked in. A very cute baby was lying in the crib. When he saw me, he stopped crying. He looked at me with big, curious eyes and babbled. The little one muttered something in his mouth. If my child is also born safely. He is probably about the same age now. Sadly, he was even deprived of the right to see this world by his own father. Thinking of my son, I couldn't help but burst into tears. My heart ached. Just then, a sound of rapid breathing came from the next room. "Brother Christopher, you're so good. Christopher, brother, am I better than Emily? Christopher, brother, you're so naughty." I froze. Christopher had said he had something to do at the company, but he was actually meeting Sophia here. My face immediately turned pale. My whole body felt as if it had been frozen. I felt as if countless arrows had pierced my body. The pain was unbearable. What irony. Just the other day I had lost my child and had surgery, and now he's brazenly bringing someone else in. I crouched on the floor, buried my head in my arms, and couldn't stop crying. Suddenly, a dark figure rushed into the room and hit me hard on the head with a broom. "You wretched man, what are you doing here alone? Are you trying to harm my grandson?" the dark figure said angrily, while hitting me hard. I was too tired to move. The dark figure stopped only after I could no longer move. When I looked, I saw it was my mother-in-law. "Mom." I endured the pain and the sadness in my heart. I was just about to explain, but she interrupted me. "Don't call me Mom. You made me lose my eldest grandson. How dare you come back here? Hearing these words made me feel very sad. She knew everything, but she blamed me for everything. For the first time, I felt that my mother-in-law was so hypocritical. She was so hypocritical that it felt like a stranger to me. They had conspired to put on a show. They had killed my child. I had already lost my fertility, but they still wanted to hurt me like this. I clenched my fists. My fingertips turned white from the force. At that moment, Sophia and Christopher in the next room also heard the commotion. They hurried over. "Mom, what's wrong?" Christopher looked at me. Then he looked at my mother-in-law. Frowning, he said, there were still marks on his neck from earlier intimacy. "I feel uncomfortable in my eyes. Son, look at the woman you married. Just now, while no one was around, I tried to do bad things to Sophia. I didn't." I hurriedly explained. "Emily, sister, how can you do this, Sophia? He's just a baby," Sophia said while running to the crib, hugged the baby, checked carefully. "Emily, sister, just because your own child is gone, you want to do something to Sophia. Sophia's neck is red from your strangling. You're lying." I didn't touch her. I quickly walked over. I wanted to see the child Sophia was holding. However, Christopher grabbed her. "Emily, you actually laid hands on a child. I really regret marrying you. People like you deserve to have no children. I will teach you a lesson today, you vicious woman," Christopher said, as he stepped forward and put his hands around my neck. His eyes were cold. I immediately felt short of breath. My whole body was overcome by a strong sense of suffocation. I wanted to scream for help, but I couldn't get the words out. I was about to faint. With my last ounce of strength, I grabbed the vase next to me and smashed it over Christopher's head. "Son, are you okay?" Grandma quickly walked over to Christopher and held him up. With a full face of concern, she said, "Oops, you unlucky guy, are you out of your mind? How could you fight with my son?" Grandma sternly questioned. Her eyes were full of anger. "Christopher, brother, let me see. Are you hurt? Are you bleeding?" Sophia ran to Christopher in tears, holding his face with full of concern. She said, "They were so cruel to you. No wonder they were so ruthless to Sophia. Christopher, my dear, you can't let her off lightly this time, my son. You can't indulge her bad intentions." Grandma and Sophia stood on the same side. Grandma said, "If she dares to hit you today, she will dare to do the same to my eldest grandson tomorrow. She might be unable to bear children herself. She is unbalanced, so she wants to take revenge on everyone." Christopher listened. His face fell. He looked at me and said, "Emily, you didn't protect your child yourself. You can't blame anyone else for this." Christopher said, "If you had paid more attention to security, how could the robbers have gotten in?" Hearing this, I felt a pang of discomfort. I felt particularly uncomfortable. As the instigator of the whole thing, how could he say such things? It's really hypocritical. No matter how careful I am, as the father of the child, he wants something to happen to the child. How could I possibly prevent it? Not to mention the criminals. As long as Christopher is willing, my child could be in danger in a million different ways. I stare coldly at Christopher. "You have no right to talk about my child. You know what you did. You know what you did. You've gone too far." And with that, I turn and walk out of the house. It's pouring with rain outside. The rain mixes with my tears. I'm a little relieved. At least this way, no one can see how sad I am. I feel like a lost soul. I walk aimlessly along the road. I felt particularly cold. My body and heart were cold as ice. It was dark. I stumbled back to the house Christopher and I shared. There was no one home. I sat down on the sofa, exhausted. My eyes fell on the photo on the wall. In the photo, Christopher gently put his arm around me, and my mother-in-law looked at us with love in her eyes. I had been blinded by this image. I gradually invested all my heart and soul in this hypocritical and selfish family. I was so stupid. I stood up, took down the photo on the wall, cut it into pieces. I immediately called my lawyer, asked him to prepare a divorce agreement for me. Just as I was packing all my belongings into boxes in the room, I suddenly heard the sound of the door lock turning. I looked up. It was Christopher who had come in. Christopher saw me. He froze for a moment. Then he rubbed his forehead. He looked tired as he walked towards me. He asked me, "Where have you been? You didn't answer your phone." I ignored him. Christopher looked at me, not getting a response. His tone softened. "Don't be mad. Forget what happened at lunch." I was a bit anxious. I spoke a bit harshly. He said, "I'll take you out for your favorite filet mignon as an apology. Is that okay?" I listened. I just gave a cold smile. Filet mignon. Christopher had never cared about my preferences. "I guess Sophia likes it," I said calmly. "I never eat beef. You'd better bring Sophia's mother, Sophia, along." Christopher listened to me, frowning, shouting, Emily, can you stop being so unreasonable? Sophia and I grew up together. We will always be good friends. You shouldn't always assume the worst about me. Hearing this, I sneered. Christopher, do you dare say with a clear conscience that there really is nothing between you and Sophia? Then tell me, whose child is Sophia? Hearing this, Christopher's eyes quickly flashed with unease. Emily, Sophia is a child I adopted from an orphanage. Orphanage? I sneered. Since Christopher was determined to keep up the act, I had no interest in exposing him. I turned and walked towards the room. Just then, the door lock rattled again. I turned my head and saw it was Sophia. How did you get the key to my house? I asked with a frown. Christopher's brother gave it to me. Sophia's eyes showed a hint of smugness. She continued, Christopher's brother told me Sophia really likes me and asked me to come and keep her company more often. Hearing this, I had no desire to deal with her and walked straight to the bedroom. Christopher grabbed my arm and said, Emily, do you know that after you left? Sophia cried sadly all afternoon. Why don't you take advantage of everyone being here and apologize to her? No way. I immediately refused. Apologize to the accomplice who caused the death of my child. Never in this life. Brother Christopher, let's forget about it. Sophia's eyes were red, and she said in a tone of grievance, I feel like Emily doesn't like me very much. I'd better not come here anymore. Christopher saw this scene. His eyes revealed some reluctance. He turned to me and said with a stern face, Emily, can we talk calmly? He then questioned, is it so hard for you to apologize? Hurry up, otherwise I will have a quarrel with you in front of Sophia. I don't. I gritted my teeth. I said word by word, Christopher, if you really care about Sophia, don't let her provoke me. Christopher heard this and flew into a rage. He raised his hand and slapped me hard. Emily, luckily you won't be able to have children in the future. Otherwise, the children will have a biological mother like you. How pitiful. After saying this, Christopher dragged Sophia, angrily walked away. Christopher's words were like countless arrows and pierced my heart. I was in severe pain. How could he have spoken like that? Watching him leave with Sophia, my heart was cold. I sat on the sofa, tears streaming down my face. I cried until my tears ran dry, and immediately signed the divorce papers sent by the lawyer. Then, I pulled up my suitcase and left without looking back. Before boarding the plane, I threw away my SIM card. Today is Sophia's first birthday, but Christopher doesn't seem to be in a good mood. He hasn't contacted me for 5 days. Christopher's brother, don't worry. Emily is probably still angry. That's why she's not showing up. Sophia seems very happy while I was gone. Christopher promised her that she could go on stage as Sophia today. Christopher's mother said with a smile, that's right. My son, you even called the police. The police will definitely notify you immediately if anything happens. The ceremony is about to begin. We need to hurry to the foyer. Christopher listened and nodded, getting up and walking towards the banquet hall. Just then, Christopher's phone rang. It was the police. The other end of the line said, Mr. Thompson, hello, we have found news of your wife. Christopher hung up the phone, feeling a little uneasy. In the past, when we had a fight, I would also go out for a walk to clear my mind, but I never went too far, and I never thought about canceling my ID card in the USA. Christopher began to feel uneasy. He realized that this time he might really lose me. Just then, Sophia walked over from the foyer. Christopher, my brother, why are you still here in a daze? Come with me to the foyer. The next program is for the two of us to go on stage as Sophia's parents and give a speech. Sophia smiled and walked over. She took Christopher's hand. Christopher, however, stood still. He just frowned and looked at Sophia. He suddenly felt Sophia's smile a little harsh. He had never felt this way before. Sophia, why don't you not go on stage? Sophia froze for a moment and asked, Brother Christopher, what's wrong with you? Christopher replied, I have already taken Sophia into the Thompson family as promised. Therefore, in the future, his mother will only be Emily. I hope you can recognize your own identity and not cause unnecessary misunderstandings. Brother Christopher, how could you do this to me? Sophia's eyes reddened. Tears immediately fell. If I've done anything wrong, tell me. I'll definitely change. Emily walked up to Christopher. She wanted to hug him. Christopher immediately felt a strong sense of annoyance. He pushed Sophia away forcefully. He said sternly, Don't come near me again. After saying that, Christopher hurried home. The police told him to go back and see if he could find any clues about me. Christopher hurried home. At a glance, he found the divorce agreement I had left on the coffee table in the living room. Surprise shone in his eyes. His hands trembled slightly. He turned to the last page of the agreement. He saw my already dry signature in the signature box. He froze. How could this be? Why would Emily suddenly want a divorce from me? Christopher whispered. His voice was full of powerlessness. No, it can't be. Christopher took out his phone and called our mutual friends. Unfortunately, after calling all his friends, Christopher still hadn't found any news about me. Christopher completely broke down. He rushed to the bedroom. Seeing that the closet was empty, there wasn't a single one of my clothes. He became even more panicked. Christopher searched the bedroom and study. He even checked the kitchen. But in this house, he couldn't find the slightest sign that I had ever lived here. Emily, where on earth have you gone? Do you really not want me anymore? Christopher whispered. His eyes were a little red. At that moment, the doorbell suddenly rang. A flash of surprise and excitement instantly crossed Christopher's eyes. It must be Emily coming back. Christopher happily ran towards the door. Unfortunately, as soon as he opened the door, he saw his mother and Sophia with the baby in her arms. His mother asked, "Son, what's wrong with you? Sophia's first month celebration has just started. Why did you leave? You know how embarrassing that was." Sophia saw the situation. She was not happy either. She said to Christopher, "Christopher, brother, I think Emily, sister, did it on purpose. This is great. Our Sophia is going to be teased because she is so young. She suddenly disappeared these past few days. I think she just doesn't want to see our Sophia doing well. What a heartless woman. Why are you still looking for her?" Hearing this, Christopher finally couldn't control himself. He shouted, "Stop it." Sophia suddenly trembled with fear. The baby she was holding also started crying uncontrollably. Christopher's mother saw the situation. She took the baby in her arms with a heartbroken expression. She said, "Why did you shout so loudly? The children are all scared by you, and Sophia is not wrong. Why are you so angry with that kind of person?" "Mom," Christopher rubbed his tired forehead, looking a little helpless. "If you hadn't always said those things, Emily wouldn't have been so angry with you and left. Now you're blaming me." Christopher's mother raised her eyebrows slightly, reminding him, "Don't forget how you treated her and her child. Perhaps she chose to leave because she knew the truth." Hearing this, Christopher's heart sank. "No, that's absolutely impossible," Christopher shouted. Then he took out his phone and called his assistant. He ordered, "Post my wife's picture globally immediately. Whoever has any information will be rewarded with $1 million. At that time, I was in Canada. When the plane landed safely, I was a little excited. I had finally left that home full of lies and pain, looking at the bustling crowds in the street. I felt incredibly relieved. From now on, this is where I will start over. I dragged my luggage and walked towards the orphanage I had previously looked up online. When I arrived at the door, I called out, "Hello, is anyone here?" I stood at the door of the welfare institution and called out politely in the Canadian language. After a while, a young man came out. When he got closer, I realized that he was a very handsome young man. The accent was still American, a fellow countryman. There was also a hint of excitement in the boy's eyes. I quickly nodded and said, "Hello, my name is Emily. I just submitted a resume online." "Emily." The boy thought for a moment. Then he said, "I remember, you're here to apply for a teaching position." The boy led me into the office. As soon as I sat down, he asked, "Tell me, why do you want to work in an orphanage?" Hearing this, I froze for a moment. Why? Probably because I won't be able to have my own children in the future. And the children here will never receive the love of a mother again. Maybe because I am an orphan myself. I really wanted to help these children find the childhood they had lost. I thought about it for a long time, and finally said, because of love. I want to fill the void in the hearts of these children who lack love with love. The boy froze for a moment. He froze for a moment. Then the boy extended his hand. With a smile, he said, "I am the director, Jacob. Welcome to the team." I nodded. I responded, "Thank you," I said happily. Then, Jacob showed me around the various activities of the orphanage. At this point, I learned that this orphanage not only adopted orphans from Canada, it also adopted children from all over the world. What I didn't expect was that Jacob paid for all the expenses himself. I immediately admired him even more. He was so young, but he was able to devote himself wholeheartedly to such a meaningful cause. I have to say, Jacob is really amazing with his help. I quickly adapted to life here. However, just when I was about to forget about the past, I saw Christopher's missing persons poster online. "My wife is missing. I can't find her anywhere. I hope you can help me. I really love her. I'll pay $1 million as a reward for any useful information." Reading the content of the missing persons poster, I felt my stomach churn. I felt sick. Love me, Christopher is such a hypocrite. Offering a reward of 1 million, that seems pretty generous. I don't understand why he keeps pestering me. Could it be that he doesn't want to see me doing well? My face fell. My mood immediately became very bad. With a bang, I slammed the computer shut. At that moment, a soft voice came from behind me. "Mtkes Emily, the computer in our welfare institute is already very old. Please close it gently." Hearing this, I turned my head away embarrassedly. "Director Jacob, how many times have I told you, you don't need to be so polite. Just call me Jacob." Jacob waved his hand. Then he sat down next to me. "Emily, I didn't realize you were so valuable. 1 clue is worth 1 million. Your husband really comes from a wealthy family." Jacob said with a smile. "You've seen it all." I pursed my lips. Jacob nodded. He asked with a slight hint of doubt, "You don't seem very happy." Hearing her words, I shook my head. "Emily, we are now good partners who work together. If you have anything to say, just tell me directly. Besides, keeping things bottled up inside is not good for your health." At Jacob's persuasion, I told him everything about my past. After listening, Jacob slapped his thigh, full of anger. How could there be such an outrageous family in the world? This is really too much. After saying that, Jacob turned his head and looked at me. His eyes were firm and he patted his chest. "Don't worry, Emily. I will never let anyone bully you again. I will protect you." Hearing this, my face suddenly turned red. Jacob's words made me feel a bit too intimate. Seeing my reaction, Jacob looked a bit embarrassed. In fact, what I wanted to say was, as the director of the Welfare Institute, I am responsible for taking care of every teacher. "Well, thank you," I whispered. Not long after, Christopher's post went viral. Netizens quickly figured out Christopher's true identity. People left comments below the post. "Wow, she runs. He chases. She runs again, so the CEO can also be heartbroken. I thought only ordinary people like me would encounter the situation of their wives leaving them. Dear God, please give me some pointers. Let me find the opportunity to get rich." As the post became more and more popular, some netizens from Canada found the welfare institution where I was staying. They started teasing and scolding me. They even secretly took photos of me. These actions seriously disrupted my daily life. Although Jacob went out of his way every day to help me get rid of these people, I still felt extremely annoyed. What's more, these people came from all walks of life. They were all doing different things. There were local thugs. There was even a murderer who had just been released from prison. These people seriously threatened the safety of the children in the welfare institution. In the end, I made up my mind to leave this place. But on the morning I was about to leave with my suitcase, I happened to run into Christopher. I stood there unable to react. Christopher was very different from before. His hair was messy. His face was full of stubble. His shirt was crumpled. He looked particularly depressed. Those who knew him knew that he was the president of a wealthy family. Those who didn't would think he was a homeless person. Christopher's eyes lit up when he saw me. His eyes, which had been dull, suddenly sparkled. "Emily, I've finally found you, Emily. Do you know how much I've missed you these days?" he said. Christopher stepped forward and tightly embraced me. I immediately felt very uncomfortable. "Let go of me," I shouted. I struggled hard to break free from Christopher's embrace. However, his strength was too great. Just then, a dark figure suddenly rushed out from behind me. Immediately afterwards, there was a loud bang, with a loud noise. The restraints on my body were completely undone. I turned my head to the side and asked in surprise, "Dean, you're standing behind me. Stay away from people like this." Jacob nodded. He coldly glanced at Christopher. Christopher immediately flew into a rage. He loudly asked, "Who are you?" "It doesn't matter who I am. You can't bully Emily anyway," Jacob said coldly. Hearing this, Christopher's face fell. He turned and glared at me. "Emily, you're something. I thought you were leaving because you were angry. It turns out it's because you've got a new boyfriend. Emily, what you're doing is really inappropriate." As soon as Jacob finished speaking, his fist shot out again at Christopher. The two of them immediately wrestled together. To my surprise, Jacob looked gentle and refined. He looked like a scholar, but when it came to fighting, he didn't hold back at all. Christopher was completely defenseless against him. Christopher was already covered in bruises. He was lying on the ground, moaning in pain. I quickly pulled Jacob back. "That's enough. What, you're going to let someone like that get away with it?" Jacob said angrily. "That's not it. I'm just afraid that after you're done beating him up, you'll have to go to the police. So you were worried about me after all," Jacob said happily. "Emily, why are you ignoring me? At that moment, Christopher also struggled to his feet. Emily, don't you love me anymore? I couldn't help laughing when I heard this. Love, Christopher, don't be ridiculous. When I loved you, what did you do? You killed my child with your own hands, and I lost the chance to be a mother again forever. Not only that, you forced me to raise your child with Sophia. Hearing this, Christopher suddenly panicked. His eyes were full of unease. He stuttered. Emily, you know everything. Listen to me. Stop. I interrupted Christopher immediately. Christopher, listen carefully. I will never forgive you in my life. Get away from me. After saying that, I turned around and walked towards the orphanage. Christopher saw this. He wanted to catch up, but Jacob stopped him. How dare you come to see Emily? You did that kind of thing before. Now you have the nerve to find her, Jacob said coldly. Hearing this, Christopher froze in place. His face was full of sadness. I'm sorry, Christopher whispered. He stayed at the orphanage for 3 days and 3 nights. It wasn't until the morning of the 4th day that he left. A month later, the Thompson family's hot news reached Canada. It turned out that Christopher had told everyone in the live broadcast what he had done to me. He also killed Sophia in front of all the netizens. When the police found him, he only said one thing: I ended all the mistakes with my own hands. Emily will definitely forgive me. Christopher was sentenced to death for murder and hiring others to commit burglary. On the day of the execution, many netizens expressed their celebration and joy online. The once flourishing Thompson group had stood for many generations, but collapsed the moment Christopher was imprisoned. Christopher's mother lost her son and grandson. She completely lost her mind. She was admitted to a psychiatric hospital. The staff there had long since learned of her actions from the news and the internet. They were disgusted by her. Christopher's mother suffered unfortunate treatment in one place after another. She died less than a year later. However, I no longer care about these things. Right now, I just want to devote all my energy to my work at the Welfare Institute. I want to take good care of every child here. One day, 3 years later, I was preparing dinner for the children. Suddenly, Zaya Achu hurriedly came from the USA. He told me that someone had fainted. I immediately put down what I was doing. I hurried to the classroom. I then noticed that all the children in the orphanage were here. They looked at me. Their eyes were full of expectation. I slowly walked to the center of the classroom. Jacob was kneeling on one knee there. Emily, marry me. Emily's mother. Marry Jacob's father. The children joined in. I looked at the scene. My eyes filled with tears. I almost shed a tear. Yes, I nodded slightly. I put my right hand's finger into the diamond ring Jacob held out. I felt so happy. I had a lover, a career, and a whole bunch of children. I felt the world's best things were just like this.